So this brother got up early in the morning out there with the Coyotes, all right? Out there with the Coyotes. He got up early in the morning just to get on my last damn nerves by reminding me of his greatness, his excellence, his Hall of Fame stature, humbling me right here on first take. I thought he was my brother. I thought he was my brother. You see, look at that smile on his face. Look at that smile. Somewhere Tony Kornheiser's laughing at me too. First takes in the house. Let's go.
When you go up one of those, they're going to come out playing faster. Down 14-15, and we just stuck with it.
Finally gives his crowd something to cheer about.
If I don't make it, then it's on me.
Ultimately, we eventually responded. JB, started taking over late. It's that time of the year. We all just willing to do whatever it takes to win every game.
Good morning. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take on this Friday Eve, and there is just a lot happening right now. First of all, Michael Wilbon, what a treat to have you, sir, in the morning. Thank you so much for being with us. And Michael, I don't know if you can see Stephen A., but it must be playoff time because he's a little drippy this morning. Okay, S.A., did you just come straight from the club and roll out? I mean, was this a walk of shame this morning to set? What happened right here?
It's called elements of style. It's called elements of style. You bring out a little bit of style every now and then, you know what I'm saying?
A little flavor?
You just do it like that. You just do it. Listen, Molly, you look lovely yourself. I like that. I mean, the yellow brick road yesterday, that looked great. And now look at you right here. Yeah. I mean, come on now.
I didn't even need to go to Oz. I had the power all along. On that note, I hope people get that reference. Let's keep it rolling. Wilbon, so great to have you. So last night, not the redemption game many expected from Kevin Durant. After a lackluster Game 1 performance from the superstar that we are not accustomed to seeing, Brooklyn blew a 17-point lead as KD and Kyrie went cold in the second half. They combined for 1 of 17. In a 7-point loss to Boston, Stephen A. was expecting KD to pay a visit to the 40-40 club last night, but that was not the case. We're flashing back.
Kevin Durant drops 40. Kyrie got 30. Patty Mills and Seth Curry, there will be a sighting. And the Brooklyn Nets will even this series. 1-1 heading back to the Barclays Center Saturday in Brooklyn, New York.
All right. Boston taking a commanding 2-0 lead. I see you. You can't hide. As the series shifts to Brooklyn Saturday night, Stephen A., you're up first. Tell me this, sir, not what you predicted. We just heard it. How are you looking at KD now this morning?
Well, first, let me tell you how you can't look at him.
Okay.
You can't look at him as the best player in the world, which is what I've been saying for quite a while. This is a tragic performance by him in these first 2 games. And we can talk about Boston's defense, and they deserve a boatload of credit, Wilbon. And Boston's defense is sensational. I know that. And I'm not going to go where where Kendrick Perkins, rather, went the other day where he was talking about KD getting punked. I'm not going there because it's impossible for me to feel that way about him. But, my God, I have never seen Kevin Durant look this bad. It's not about the performance. It's not about the fact that he's 4 for 17 overall. To some degree, it's about the fact that he's 0 for 10 in the second half. To another degree, Wilbon, it's about the fact that he looked shook. He looked rattled. And I never thought I would see something like that happen to Kevin Durant on the offensive side of the ball. Certainly some nights are better than others. But we've never looked at Kevin Durant and said, my God, he looks awful. He looks like he can't get anything going. There's nothing that's working. They're all up in him. 1 minute he's double teamed. Another minute Tatum defending him straight up. And he's blocking his shot. List goes on and you crossing over and bouncing the ball off of your own foot and it's going out of bounds. He looked completely rattled. He looked completely shook. It was an abysmal, embarrassing performance by Kevin Durant. And the Brooklyn Nets are on the verge of getting swept. I can't believe that those words are coming out of my mouth. Now, I got them winning the series in 7 games. There's still a possibility, but obviously I ain't too damn confident about that right now. They're on the verge of getting swept. Swept. And I'm talking, and listen, I understand. I don't think it's going to happen. I believe they're going to win Game 3, Wilbon. But let me also say, Kevin Durant ain't alone. Then let me indict Mr. Kyrie Irving. Both of them combined to shoot 8 of 30 from the field. Just abysmal. Did you hear what Kyrie Irving alluded to after the game? Basically alluding to himself being docile. Like that, Will won't check me because your vocabulary is more extensive than mine. But docile, unenthused, lacking energy and fervor. How the hell that happened with all that time he missed?
One game.
Hold on, wait a minute. I asked the question. How that happened with all that time he missed?
It's one game. I'm not drawing this many conclusions. Here's a conclusion. Here's the only one I'm willing to draw. Those two, as great as they are, and Kevin Durant is still the best player in the game. They got harassed in the bad shooting, Stephen A. I don't care how great a player is. We thought Michael Jordan harassed. Now, it's not as physical now as it was then. But for today, in the context of great defense, the Celtics can play it. We saw Bird harassing and this kind of stuff by the Lakers' great defense when they had it. We saw Magic harassing and this kind of stuff when he had to play against the Celtics and great defense. This is what happens. This is basketball. It's a series. It's not the NFL. I don't need to draw 400 conclusions from last night. Here's the conclusion. They better figure out how to set better screens. They better figure out, and you mentioned this on Get Up this morning, they better figure out how to pass the basketball. You look at all those clips that we have of KD. What's going on? He is in ISO mode. That has to stop. He is not going to beat 2 and 3 Boston Celtics defenders. This defense is too good for that, and God help the Nets if Robert Williams comes back at any time in this series. But Stephen A., I think Brooklyn's going to respond. They're going to look at film. Look at these clips of Kevin Durant. Where's the ball movement? He's going to figure it out. As he says, I'm KD. Y'all know who I am. He and Kyrie will figure out with the help of the coaching staff. We've got to play better offensive team basketball than this. I think they will. I think they'll win game 3. I don't think they're on the verge of anything. And I picked the Celtics, and I'm staying with it. And I'm saying still Celtics in 6 games. But let's not go. I'm not ready to indict anybody yet. They had a really bad game last night. What great players and great teams do is respond.
Stephen A., let me just say something really quickly, because Wilburn brought up coaching, and you also brought up Kyrie and his energy, and I'll just say this. It is Ramadan, and from what I understand, he's fasting, and that's tough, not eating all day long, then going out there and playing during the playoffs. Like, that is real, and that can have an effect on your energy. But also, I was talking to Coach Seth Greenberg, who will join us in just a bit. We're going to get into Jay Wright with him, and he was saying that coaching appears to be an issue for the Nets. How much of that is playing a role?
You're damn right it's playing a role. Listen. We have to be honest here, okay? First of all, I respect what you brought up about Kyrie Irving because that's incredibly, incredibly valid. And we do understand that. But the point is that it didn't stop him from doing what he did in game 1. So in other words, it's an extreme from game 1 to game 2. Wilbon's absolutely right. It's just one game. But guess what? They only got 2 left, really. I mean, you can't afford 2 more losses. So let's understand that the numbers are very palpable and they're very, very significant. It's not 1 of 82 games. It's 1 of 7. And the first team to 4 wins. And Boston's now got 2. All they need is 2 more. The Brooklyn Nets have got to win Saturday. If they go down 3-0, this series is over. And they were on the verge of getting swept, and who thought they were going to do that? And the reason why the coaching is so pivotal, Wilbon knows this. If you're a player and you're a star player, a veteran who's won a championship in Kyrie Irving's situation, 2 if you're Kevin Durant, and you are on the record, well, we don't really need a coach. Remember what they said. Remember that this situation,
Yeah.
We don't really need a coach.
Great point.
Well, guess what? Yeah, you do, because it's not. Because here's the key thing. Why would you make a statement like that? You know why Kyrie made that statement? Because he was thinking about Kyrie. If you're thinking about the rest of the team, of course you need a coach. You know why? Because you know everyone ain't Kyrie. Everybody can't beat you. Everybody can't explode and drop 60. Everybody's not as gifted and as much of a magician as he is. That the same applies to Kevin Durant. And for those 2 to be the faces and the cornerstone of this franchise and not prioritize the experience necessary in order to coach and counsel and tutor the pieces around them, that means they're accountable for the coaching. Because Sean Marks went to them to get that approval to bring in a coach who we all love and respect as a person. And Steve Nash, a good man and very knowledgeable about basketball. but he never coached a day in his life. And they said, hey, we don't really care because they wanted to be comfortable. And if you're thinking about yourself and you're not thinking about the team, you make mistakes like that. And a series like this is when it comes back to bite you, because I can tell you this. Ime Udoka, that brother can coach.
Stephen A., you raise a great point about sort of the Nets culture and what it is they wanted to put together, and KD and Kyrie doing that, and it's all fine and well. And I agree with you. But here's where I'm going to piggyback off what you just said. Great defense in any sport makes you even more uncomfortable. And so what did the great coaches, what were they able to do when they got in these series? And you look back over time with Phil Jackson and Pat Riley and Chuck Daly, and I don't have to go, obviously Greg Popovich. What were they able to do? They were able to, on off days and at halftimes, find ways particularly to get their stars if they were a little rattled, and you mentioned that with KD and what that defense is doing to him. They countered that. Okay, and I'm going to ask you this question because you've been around the Nets more than I have this season. Do you think they have that within them? Do you think that KD as a leader, we know Kyrie ain't nobody's leader. He's a follower. He's never been able to lead anyone, but he's been able to follow a great player. Do you think that KD, with Steve Nash's assistance, do they have, and I do mean that in that order, do they have that in them? We know Kyrie, he ain't trying to be coached. They're not interested in that. He already told us that. But this is what they have to do. They have this off day. Look, they got a one-game series. So I don't believe, yes, they're on the verge of being swept because they got to win game 3. I believe they can and will do that at home.
I believe
the question is, game 3. Do they have it in them to respond strategically, emotionally, intellectually in a basketball context? Do they have that in them? That's what I'm waiting to see.
Let me answer the question. Let me answer your question, Wilbon. You've covered this game for decades. You forgot more basketball than most people know. Just for the record, okay?
That.
Here's the deal, my man. Wilbon, I'm going to throw something at you, and I'm going to ask you this question. You and I both know there's differences between good and great, and then there are differences between greatness and legends. Somebody called me last night to talk to me about that when talking about KD. They said greatness and legends. There's no question he's one of the great ones. We ain't debating that. But when you talk about legends, one of the reasons you look at some of those other legends was because of their ability to galvanize the troops. Yeah, we don't talk about Isaiah Thomas nearly as much as we should. But with all of those bad boy Pistons there, the littlest dude was Isaiah Thomas, and he was the ringleader. He was the legend. When you look at Michael Jordan, legend. Kobe, legend. LeBron, regardless of what people want to say about him, legend. When you D Wade, legend. When you got people around that you know, they look at you, and you are the one that galvanizes them. You are the one that holds them accountable. You ain't just making shots, putting up points, or doing your job. You're demanding that they do it and holding them accountable. We don't know if that's KD. And that's what we're on the verge of finding out.
Stephen A., you are totally right, but you do that when you're down in a playoff series. I'm glad you mentioned the great Isaiah Thomas, Chicago's own, who had these same things where they were down in a series and he probably had a 4 for 16 game. And you're right. You are the guy as the leader who has to galvanize that team in a way that doesn't happen in any other sport. You got too many guys in a baseball locker room. You got way too many guys in an NFL locker room, even though you have leaders, plural. In professional basketball, in the NBA, you got a guy. And that's on KD. Do I believe he's up to that? Yes, I do. It's time to show it. Yeah. I mean, we've seen all the legend, Magic Johnson and Boston Garden, Junior Skyler. We've seen all this. When you're down in a series, that's the glory of playoff basketball. So they're on the verge of being swept. How did they get off that verge? By winning game 3.
I believe he's up to
simple thing. He's got a couple of days to figure that out.
I believe he's up to it. He damn well had better be by Saturday. They don't win Saturday.
More we and less me on the nets. And Saturday, you two will be on the court at the Barclays Center for that Game 3, right? Up close and personal, eyeing those folks. Gentlemen, you know who's not on the struggle bus? That would be Joel Embiid, sure looking like the MVP in the six. Drake on the sidelines. The Sixers clinch Game 3 versus the Raptors after Embiid's clutch turnaround three-pointer beat the shot clock buzzer with 0.7 seconds left in double OT. What a finish. Philly is up 3-0. Embiid backs down to nobody, not even Toronto's favorite son.
I'm coming for the switch too. You better be there. You ain't gonna score. I'll be there when you get there. I'll be there for that one.
Okay, Drake's got the cornrows. I'll start with you here, Wilbon. How far can Embiid carry this Sixers squad?
He's an MVP. He can carry him all the way to the finals and win this thing. Philadelphia is good enough, particularly with the emergence of Maxey. And Stephen A knows, this is one place I'm going to pat myself on the back because I've been talking about Maxey all season. And his emergence as a two-way, I'm not going to say star yet because you have to complete at least one playoff season to me to sort of be mentioned as a star. But Maxey's on his way playing like this. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off Harden. Harden didn't have to average 40. Harden just has to be an all-star now, not a Hall of Famer every single night. And he can, of course, still be that. But Embiid leads the way. This is why he got both of us, he got both our votes for MVP. As great as Joker was, as great as Antetokounmpo was, Embiid is the guy that I thought would play like this in the playoffs, and he is. And, of course, it's a regular season award. But I think we're seeing that now validated, if you will. So Philly can do this. They have everything at their disposal, to me right now, to compete. Boston's going to be a tough out if they advance. Miami, Milwaukee, these teams, and Milwaukee's struggling already. Philadelphia is a team that hasn't had to struggle. But if that shot doesn't go in and Toronto holds on to that lead, at 2-1, we would be saying Philadelphia's in a struggle. Nobody has great room for error. The margin is small for everybody, but I like where Philly's going.
I just think it's important, first things first, Wilbon. The Philadelphia 76ers advanced to the second round. Miami would have home court advantage. That would mean there's about 4 nights prior to the game that you're in Miami, a.k.a. South Beach. I think this is very important. I think this is very important to point out. It's going to require focus, okay? You can't have distractions, all right? All right, James Harden, you got to stay focused. You got to stay focused, which is very, very difficult to do in South Beach. Let me just throw that out there. Now, having said all of that.
Stephen A., wait. Stephen A., let me interrupt you for a second to tell a quick story about from your friend and mine, B.J. Armstrong, who has one of the great lines of all time describing this. And B.J. says, before you decide who you're going to pick to win a series, you better figure out who in that series can play without sleep. And I know it's meant to be a funny line, but it's true, the distractions of the road in particular cities, including one of your favorite cities, Miami.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Who can play without sleep in this league? It's such a funny line, but it's telling.
It's important. It's important. You know what I'm saying? I know Doc Rivers going to try hard. You know, I know he's going to try hard. But Doc Rivers smart enough to know he can pull for so much off. Not South Beach. All right? It's a problem. So now that you have that going on, now we get to the basketball court. Maxey and his evolution is something to pay attention to, no doubt about it. But consider what Miami has in its arsenal. Consider the Jimmy Butler, who just dropped 45. Consider the athleticism and mobility of a Bam Adebayo. Consider the shooting of the Duncan Robinsons and the Tyler Heroes of the world. Consider the experience of a Kyle Lowry and a P.J. Tucker of the world. Miami's got, and they got some young brothers that they've developed nicely. And so when you look at it from that perspective, even though I wouldn't be surprised that if the Sixers were to beat Miami, assuming because we think that Miami's going to beat Atlanta and we know Philadelphia is going to beat Toronto, assuming that that's the series, I'm of the mindset Philadelphia can beat them, but they wouldn't be the favorites. I would be picking Miami to win that series. I really, really would because, listen, I think it's one of those situations where it's going to be tough and Embiid's going to show up. I have no doubt. But I think quite a few people are going to show up for Miami. And collectively, they might be a bit too much unless Harden becomes just a little bit more Houston rather than what he's been. Listen, Maxey can give you your points, and I get all that. Tobias Harris, I'm not ignoring his contribution and how pivotal he will be. But I think that James Harden with 19 points and 6 or 8 assists and stuff, that ain't going to cut it in that series against Miami. He's going to need to do more.
You know, but you know what Philly has, though, Stephen A. I think you'll agree with this. They got the best player in the series. You're right about I agree with everything you said about Miami. And, yes, they would be a slight favorite, I think, going into that. But, Stephen A., if Joel Embiid continues to play the way we saw him in the second half of the season and the way he's played so far in this series, he has been dominant. He would be the best player in that series. And I think the confidence that would have to come from his teammates would really help Philadelphia, particularly early in that series, if they can get, a steal win in Miami in one of those first two games and come home. But that would be a series worth watching. Yes, we presume we're going to see it. But, man, Embiid last night and the way he's been going and talking to Nick Nurse and the confidence he is just brimming with. We know the game is there. Talk about galvanized, right? We talked about that with KD. Right. Can he do that with his? You know Embiid is doing that. We can see it. We can hear it. You can feel it.
I can. That's why we both voted for him MVP. With all that he had to go through and still perform the way that he performed this year, there's no question about it. And that's probably why Doc Rivers called this number last night, because he wanted to remind the world that this dude is the MVP, even though the vote was already in. But let me bring this up again, one last time. James Harden in South Beach. I'm concerned. I'm concerned.
Oh.
Okay. And so what I would strongly advise is that he calls Allen Iverson. I sat up there covering Allen Iverson, Molly, Wilbon. Wilbon will remember this. Allen Iverson goes through a 10-game slump. He's just shooting awful. I can't hit the backside of a barn. Nothing is working and all of this other stuff. You know why? Because that brother sat up there and said, you know what, I'm tired of Larry Brown getting on my nerves, and I'm going to go home, early and go to bed early and sleep one time and be that little choir boy. And he played like trash. And then he said enough, and then hung out all night one night, and the next night, and the next day, he dropped 58. On Steve Francis and Coutinho Mobley and those boys. So that's who Harden needs to talk to before the Miami series starts.
I get it. Listen,
it's just
Stephen A., I was just out there in Miami. You know me. I'm the loser early bird, so I'm going down looking for coffee like 5 a.m. People with their solo cups, the nips, they're still out. Party's still getting started. Yeah. And we're talking like 5 in the morning. They're still going. I'm trying to start my day. Can a coffee shop open up or something? Hey, real quick.
Looked best that day. My tan looked best that day. Remember when I was rocking the tan in the white? That was the day, Wilbon. I was looking pretty smooth that day when I was in Miami. It does something for you. It's good for the spirit.
It only took him till 10:23 to compliment himself. I think that's because you're on the show. Hey, real quick, work with me, Stephen A. And sorry, Ryan, let me just mention this because I'd be remiss if I didn't. When we have Wilbon on, and we've got Antoine Lewis in the control room for the first time in a long time. How about Chi-Town? DeMar DeRozan? You think the Lakers are salty or what?
Yes, sir.
How about your boy? 41 points, playoff record, super impressive. Obviously, a huge loss with Middleton.
I was so excited last night. I had the phone in my hand. I was going to hit up Stephen A. I was so excited I couldn't even text. For that series to be one. Look. I'm not going to sit up here and say, now the Bulls have gotten that game on the road. They're in control of the series. They're not. But it was exciting. We're very excited, Stephen A.
Absolutely. We're going to celebrate it. Okay. Go Knicks, go. New York, stand up. All right, let's get to Phoenix now. The Suns, Devin Booker, likely to miss games 3 and 4. Where's your energy, SA, versus New Orleans Pelicans with a mild right hamstring strain? But he hasn't been ruled out for the rest of the opening round Western Conference Series. Sources told ESPN Booker's battled hamstring issues the past 2 seasons. In November, strained his left hamstring, missed 7 games. Last year, during the NBA Finals, suffered hamstring injury Game 3, played through it, kept it quiet. The 2021 regular season also had a left hamstring injury, missed 4 games. Game 3 Friday in the Big Easy. Wilbon, are the Suns in trouble in this series without having Book?
Yeah, but on a 1 to 10 scale of trouble, I'm going to say, Molly, it's about a 4 right now.
Okay.
I mean, you got to win one of the next 2 games, so you give Booker some time to come back. They were 5-2 when he had the other hamstring injury, 5-2 without him. They have had to play enough games without him and without Chris Paul to not panic. They just don't. And Monty Williams' personality is very important in this. And obviously, Chris Paul's personality is very important in this. You know, I've been around these guys now for a couple of years. They've been together, and I know win this series is not going to be easy, but I think it could work in their favor if and when they move on to a play without Booker, so not be so dependent. You cannot win a championship without Booker for the whole run. They're going to need him, but they also got to let him get well. Stephen A., you know how important these hamstring injuries are. You and I have covered many series with great players who hamstrings have affected what they can do, is taking Chris Paul out in the past. So yes, I'm concerned. And with Brandon Ingram and C.J. McCollum, this is a whole different team. This is not a team that's 11 games under 500 or whatever they are. It's a new team, newly constituted, reconstituted. So they're in some trouble, but I expect them to win this series. It's going to be difficult.
Man, you know, you could be right. I'm just not concerned. Not at all. Listen.
Really?
Because when you have the leadership of CP3, who'll be 37 years old in May, and right now who is the best point guard in the world, I'm going to say that again. He's 36. He's about to turn 37 next month. And CP3, Chris Paul, is the best point guard on the planet. Quintessential point guard, floor general,
Amen.
Running a show.
Amen.
He's the best. And what I mean by that, see, if this were Steph Curry, then I'd say, all right, he's going to drop about 10 threes. You know, that's what he's going to do. If it's CP3, all of a sudden Mikal Bridges is going to step up. He's going to look better. DeAndre Ayton, he going to look better. Okay? You look at Crowder, he going to look better. Cameron Johnson, he's going to look better. This is what CP3 does. This is what he does. And Monty Williams, my coach of the year, who should be everybody's coach of the year. I mean, number one team from start to finish. Okay? I mean, even without 15 games that CP3 were out, they went 12-3. Monty Williams, best coach. Listen, he's coach of the year, okay? I just look at him, and I look at CP3, and I look at what we've seen from the New Orleans Pelicans. Nice young talent. David Griffin deserves a boatload of credit. He really does. That pickup of C.J. McCollum was something else. He did a hell of a job there. I thought Philadelphia, when they had an opportunity to get him and Robert Covington for Ben Simmons as opposed to James Harden, I thought that was something they should have nabbed. That's just my personal opinion. But I'm just saying, when you look at New Orleans, they got a lot of young talent. C.J. makes things very interesting. I get all of that. I understand it. It'll be an interesting series. It'll go deep, 6-7 games without Devin Booker. But I think in the end, it's going to be about the Phoenix Suns. They're going to close this series out. And I think they'd win the next round without Booker if they had to. They ain't beating no damn Warriors, though.
Hold on.
They ain't beating no damn Warriors.
I'm going to make you laugh with this. Remember Mad Dog and JJ? But would you rather have CP3 or Bob Cousy? That's the real question.
Yeah,
My God. You didn't see this, Wilbon, but it was wild yesterday on set with those two. My goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Mad Dog's crazy.
Yeah.
No, Wilbon, go ahead. I'm just messing with
I heard about that argument. I'm going to go back. I got a YouTube and get you guys. I wasn't able to see this yesterday. I heard about the back and forth, Stephen A. But, yeah, I mean, look, when you start comparing across eras, it gets difficult. I'm not even old enough, as old as I am, to have seen much Cousy. I saw the tail end of Cousy like I saw Oscar Robertson, the tail end of Oscar. But I ain't going against all-time greats who won a bunch of times. I'm not going against them. I just can't do it.
Right.
All right. The great Michael Wilbon, so appreciate you.
My brother.
What a treat this morning.
Appreciate you, man.
Travel safe to the East Coast.
Appreciate you guys, Molly, Stephen A. Talk to you later today. You know we're going to start texting in a little bit. We get to these games tonight.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Wilbon. We'll talk to you soon. Such a treat. Still ahead on First Take, a wild offseason in the NFL continues as another star wideout could be on the move. Is Debo destined for Dallas? Stephen A. Hall of Fame coach Jay Wright retiring after 21 seasons at Villanova. He won 2 national championships, made 4 Final Four appearances, was named Naismith Coach of the Year in 2006 and 2016, and inducted into the Hall of Fame. Villanova said Wright will begin a new role as special assistant to the university's president. Fordham's Kyle Neptune, who spent 10 years under Wright as a video coordinator and an assistant coach, will take over as head coach. Here was Wright's statement. Over the past 21 seasons, I've had the opportunity to live out a professional dream as head coach at Villanova. Patty and I have been blessed to work with incredible, gifted young men who allowed us to coach them and brought us unmatched joy. We cannot overstate our gratitude to the players, the coaches, administrators who have been with us on this path. My guy, Coach Seth Greenberg, in the flesh.
Miss Molly.
What a treat in the spring colors. Great to see you. Jay Wright's a big deal. What is the significance of his retirement? We just had Coach K retire as well.
It's a sad day for college basketball. You think about Jay Wright, you think about all he's done, the manner in which he's run his program. He's a great ambassador for the game, college game. He's also a leader of the college game. And when you have a guy like that step away at 60 years old, 2 national championships, an Olympic gold medal, that's significant. Having said that, I think there's some reasons behind it. And here are my reasons behind it. Jay Wright survived one and done by doing it his way with maybe one of the best, if not the best culture in college basketball. I think to do it his way, the theme of Villanova basketball is to play for those who played before you. It really is a family. To maintain that culture in the environment of college basketball with NIL and the transfer portal is basically impossible. It really is, because if you're going to dip into the portal, then all of a sudden what comes with the portal is NIL. And it's not NIL, because when people talk about NIL, it's name, image, and likeness. But you know, with these collectives, it's pay for play. Players are deciding to transfer, which they have a right to do, and then they obviously have a value. They're not getting paid for the name, image, and likeness. They're getting paid for, all right, the opportunity to help a program. It's basically legalized cheating. I think it would have been really hard for Jay to do what he's done with the culture he's created
way he wants to do
in the environment that we have in college basketball today. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong, but I think he looked in the mirror and said, is this something I want to continue to do? Olympics, COVID, Final Four, incredible last 2 years. I think he also, quite honestly, is exhausted, I would think.
I'm sure.
I don't like your take at all, Coach. Let me get on you here a little bit, Steph.
I like it.
You know, the coach I love so dearly. Let me tell you something. This is a great day, and I'm going to tell you why it's a great day. I don't sit up there and get some swan sad song about Jay Wright. Jay Wright, I've known this man for 20 years. He is a phenomenal coach. It might pale in comparison to the kind of person he is. I love the man. And I saw Charles Barkley's tribute to him last night, and it was apropos. Anybody that knows Jay Wright the way we do, all of us, I worked in Philly for years, obviously. Barkley's got Philly roots and stuff like that. You know Jay Wright, it's impossible not to love the man. He's a great, great man. He truly is. And a phenomenal coach. And he's walking away on his terms. The last time we saw him, it was in a Final Four. The last time we saw Mike Krzyzewski, it was in a Final Four. We're talking about a 2-time national champion. In his case, we know how many titles Coach K won. I think it's a beautiful thing for the sport when guys like that walk away on their terms. Nobody pushed them out. Nobody said, get the hell up out of here. You had your day. All right, we appreciate you, but damn it, it's over. No. They sat up there and said, hey, we did our thing. It's okay. Life is beautiful. Let's look at what's in the future. I might want to relax. I might want to go on vacation. I might want to be just a special advisor, all right, special assistant and all this other stuff. Or I might decide I want to go to the NBA. The beauty of guys like this who are class personified, exceptionally accomplished, great leaders, great men, great people. The beauty of it is when society as a whole rewards them with the luxury of being able to do what they want to do. And that's what this is about. I'm not sad for Jay Wright at all, because Jay Wright made the call. Jay Wright sat up there and said, I have done the job. I'm good. I might decide to do this or I might decide to do that. That's what we all want. I know I want it one day.
Hey, Stephen A., first of all, I don't disagree with anything you said. My daughter went to Villanova, played volleyball there. Jay looked after her for 4 years. He's a better person than he is a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying. But let's not fool ourselves. I got 10, 15 calls last night from head coaches, assistant coaches from all over the country. And they basically said it's a sad day for college basketball because one of the faces of college basketball, one of the leaders of college basketball, and we're being selfish, is basically decided to step away. And if you do not think, Stephen A., that the culture of our game right now and what is going on in our game right now with the lack of leadership in college basketball and with everything that's going on isn't one of the reasons, and Jay might not come out and say it because he's always politically correct, as you know, always says the right thing, always, never kind of missteps. But if you don't think that's true, that what is going on in our game right now has had an impact on his ability to do it the way he wants to do it, then you know what? You're fooling yourself. Because
No, I'm not saying
I'll tell you,
that.
across the board, I'm getting calls from Big Ten coaches,
Hold on.
AC coaches, Big 12 coaches. They all say the same thing.
Hold up. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is because of the very culture you described. That's the beauty of him walking away on his own terms. That's the beauty of it. It's not something that he could have get done. Like if he had got bounced out in the first round or had a bad season and then make the NCAA tournament and this happened, we're having a different story right now. But that's not what happened, despite all the stuff that you just pointed out. The man was in the Final Four. And the one thing that I want to add is that I'm going to want you back on this show because we're going to have a conversation about NIL, name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal and all of this. We're getting into all of that because I've had several coaches who have called me, big-time coaches. Don't worry about who they are. Just trust me on this, okay? That have been complaining about the same thing you just highlighted, not just in college basketball, but in college football as well. Yep. And it is something that I'm going to address within the next week or two right here on First Take, because it needs to be addressed, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But this day, regardless of all of that you said, and you're absolutely right, the fact that Jay Wright is still able to sit up here and decide, I have options, and I'm going to exercise it, and I don't know what those options are. I'm just going to step away from Villanova, but I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do. Am I finished coaching? Am I going to go to the NBA level? What am I going to do? I don't know. I love that. He's earned it. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, sometimes you need to pause. He's as classy as they come. And listen, those Big East recruits, they can just come right up to stores. So all good. They don't have to worry about it.
It always goes back to the Huskies.
Only when it's UConn, though. Hey, Stephen A., I want to switch gears here, though, because Coach and I were talking a little earlier. I was picking his brain about the playoffs. Coach, what was your biggest takeaway from that Nets-Celtics game in terms of that matchup?
Coach Udoka absolutely is coaching his heart out and dominating the game in terms of game planning. You can talk about, everyone talks about the Celtics. They got the size, the length, the athleticism to defend Kyrie and KD, but they also have the scheme. And the defensive game plan they put together in relation to the offensive adjustments that the Nets has made has been incredible to me. The ability to take away the other team's two best players. That's what NBA coaching in the playoffs is all about, is not letting the other team's best players beat you. And that's exactly what Coach Udoka has been able to do. By adding another defender, by getting up and underneath Kyrie Irving, by getting up and underneath Kevin Durant, by adding a second defender, it's been absolutely terrific. Hey, let me tell you something. The Celtics might lose, but those two guys, he's taking those guys out and making someone else make a play. The Nets' lack of ball movement and people movement, they're playing Nets basketball. They should be playing more like, quite honestly, the Golden State Warriors. With ball movement and people movement, now you don't know where your help is coming from. Right now, the Celtics are absolutely out-coaching and out-executing in terms of schemes the Nets.
Let me say this, Coach. I completely agree with you. And this is where we have to look at Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. I happen to believe that Kevin Durant is the best player on the planet. That's how I feel about Kevin Durant. He has not looked that way in games 1 and 2. I've never seen Kevin Durant look this bad and this rattled. Now, it's partly him. He's missing shots, and we get all of that. That can happen to anybody. It's partly the physicality, and that's toward him to some degree. We haven't really seen that happen to him before. But the reason why I bring up accountability as it pertains to him and Kyrie Irving is when it comes to the coaching. I happen to be a fan of the human being that is Steve Nash. Steve Nash has always been class personified, a good dude, and I have no questions about his basketball acumen. But, Coach, you know this better than me. There's a difference between knowing and teaching. Coaches at their heart are teachers. And it might not be for the superstars, the legendary talents that exist for this game, but all the parts that are around them matter. And Kyrie Irving was on the record stating, we don't really need a coach. How you feel about that now? Because let me tell you something. Udoka has coached under Greg Popovich. He's coached in several places. This man has experience as an assistant, so he was ready for this opportunity. And we are seeing what he is doing and how exceptional he is at doing it. And we can't ignore that. On the flip side, we're wondering about Steve Nash. We're not condemning him. We're not sitting up there and saying you don't know what you're doing. Nobody's saying that about Steve Nash. What we're saying is We're looking to see him match what Udoka's doing, just like we would with any other coach. If you're going to look at the players, you have to look at the coach. And the only reason I bring up the players is because Sean Marks, the executive that runs the Brooklyn Nets, there is no way on earth he made the decision to bring Steve Nash in without getting the okay from Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And you have to know, because Kevin Durant is a two-time champion and a two-time NBA Finals MVP and will go down as one of the greatest, most prolific scorers and one of the greatest players in NBA history. Don't even question it, okay? We got that going on, and we know how electrifying Kyrie Irving can be. You're both champions. How do you not know that you don't need coaching? Ty Lue is one of the great coaches on the NBA level. Kevin Durant played for Steve Kerr. He's one of the top 15 coaches of all time. How could you embrace having a coach with no experience? So what? That was about you as a player. Yeah. It wasn't about the team. And it is not beyond the realm of comprehension where when all is said and done in this series, we may come back to that decision more than we come back to the individual player performances.
Yeah. To be continued, but Kyrie didn't touch the ball in the final 243, which is pretty crazy.
1 for 17 combined, those two dudes.
Yeah.
Volume shooter.
Yeah.
Shot a lot,
yeah.
Talked a lot. That's where the expression volume
That's
shooter
right.
comes from. Stephen A. That's our guy.
You know, I was relatively quiet. I let the long range game speak for me. I didn't say much on the basketball court. I was draining James. That's where the comparisons to Patrick Beverly don't equate. I was a shooter. He defended. I wasn't thinking about defense. I was thinking about shooting.
Hey,
I was actually quiet.
Was Steve the same guy as Stephen A?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
It was in the movie,
yeah.
He'll play himself.
Obviously.
We'll get a younger person to play me, but he was definitely himself.
Obviously he would. And he'll reference himself multiple times and compliment himself. All right, let's do this. Last night was not the redemption game many expected from Kevin Durant after a lackluster Game 1 performance from the superstar that we're not accustomed to seeing. Brooklyn blew a 17-point lead as KD and Kyrie, they went cold in the second half. Listen to this, combining for 1 of 17 in a 7-point loss to Boston. Head coach Steve Nash not willing to put all the blame on his star players.
Clearly it helps, if they have their typical outings, but that's not the only way. I think there's plenty of ways. You look at their superstars. We didn't have incredible games, so it's a team sport. It's a team effort, and I think our group's got a lot of ways where we can improve. And it's important for our group. It's a new team with little common experiences to go through some of these battles, learn from it, and be able to execute under more pressure.
All right, gentlemen. So Boston taking a commanding 2-0 lead as the series shifts to Brooklyn on Saturday night. I mentioned this earlier. Stephen A., the countdown crew, will be on the court there at the Barclays Center for that pivotal game. Frank, tell me this. If the Nets lose this series, how are we now going to be looking at KD and Kyrie?
Well, think about it. They both came together to win championships here.
Yeah.
And if they lose in the first round, that will mean that they've won 1 playoff series. Obviously, the first year in the bubble, they didn't play together. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting what Steve Nash said, Molly, because after the game, he doesn't want to put it on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Mm-hmm. But Steve Nash is a 2-time MVP in this league. Yeah. One of the assistant coaches on that team is Amari Stoudemire. If they ever went 1 for 17 in the second half of a game, Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire would walk off the court knowing we were to blame. Yeah. So Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, we all talk about how great they are. Jay Williams talked about Kyrie could be the most talented guard of all time. Did. A lot of us agree that Kevin Durant could be the best offensive player of all time. They went 1 for 17. Mm-hmm. This is on them. They're terrific players, but this was a bad second half and a really bad fourth quarter for them.
How you can perceive them, I'll say it to you. They got to make changes if they lose in this first round. I mean, I'm talking about the culture of the Brooklyn Nets. It's KD's team. As a player, he ain't going anywhere. I mean, he's a superstar, and we all get that. But the culture, the voice that they had, and the way they've basically been able to run the organization, that has to change because it hasn't amounted too much. And that's what this really comes down to. Now, up until these 2 games, it wasn't KD's fault. As far as I'm concerned, the first year, we all knew he was going to be out, okay, because he had torn his Achilles in the finals against Toronto, okay? Kyrie, as a result, ended up only playing 20 games without KD that first year. Season gets halted, pandemic takes fold, all of a sudden, there's a 4-month hiatus, per se. They come back to the bubble. Kyrie's encouraging people not to play. They end up playing anyway, and then ultimately they go home. He comes back in December. Season starts December 22nd. And 2 weeks later, Kyrie needs a mental break because he's traumatized by the riots at the U.S. Capitol. You have seen this kind of stuff. Now, why would I bring that up? Because ultimately, Molly, Frank, brought up the fact that Kyrie obviously has been fasting. It's Ramadan, and obviously we understand his faith, and that's what he's practicing. Ain't nobody throwing any shade on that. Props to him. We understand that. The flip side, however, is that you're on the court, and for whatever reason, you acknowledge you were a bit docile. I would remind you, and I think you pointed it out this morning on your show, Frank, the Defensive Player of the Year rolled up into the arena with a damn cape on, for crying out loud, a boxing robe on with Defensive Player of the Year in the back. If anything, that should alert your heighten your senses. You Kyrie Irving, Marcus Smart basically talking about he coming for you. What you gonna do about it? And Kyrie was nowhere to be found. And so when you look at it from that perspective, I mean, that's a problem. And you look at KD, what I see is a relatively skinny dude that for the first time I saw rattled. They got physical with him. He didn't see him himself. He's bouncing the ball off of his foot. He's getting his shot blocked. He's missing shots he normally makes. I mean, the list just goes on and on. 0 for 10 in the second half. Kevin Durant, one of the greatest offensive talents this game has ever seen in its 75-plus year history. And we looking at him like, who the hell is this guy? And then you got people looking at the coaching. Well, if you're looking at the coaching, Frank, you know this. How do we not look at Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving? Because Kyrie Irving's on the record stating, we don't need a coach. We don't need a coach. And KD, as loyal as they come, KD a good brother, man. He's a good brother, so he's the kind of person, he'll never speak against, the closest he'll come to speaking against a teammate is when he checked Bruce Brown for talking about the Boston Celtics and how we can exploit them without Robert Williams. He said, we don't need to be talking like that. We don't need to be saying any of that. Just hoop. That's the closest you'll ever see KD to calling out a teammate. It's not something he'll ever do. But in the end, because that's the way that he is, he's made of that cloth. It's giving people a license to get away with a lot of stuff. And when you look at Steve Nash, he's there because KD and Kyrie okayed it. We love Steve Nash. You know Steve Nash. I know Steve Nash. He's a good man. He's a good person. And I'm not questioning his basketball IQ. It's one thing to know the game. It's another thing to teach it. And you might not need to teach it to Kyrie and KD, but you damn sure need to teach it to everybody else. And because they don't have that, we're looking at a collective collapse. I believe, Frank, they will win Saturday. But who would have thought that we would be sitting here saying the Brooklyn Nets are on the verge of getting swept? That is what is in danger of happening right now. And if that happens, oh, my Lord, the house comes crumbling down. You got to change.
Are you blaming it now? Are you going to blame this on Steve Nash? Because here's the thing. It's fair game because he hasn't accomplished anything yet. Frank Vogel just got fired. He won a title. Every time Doc Rivers starts a playoff series, everyone thinks that he's going to be out, and he's won a championship. I think all that stuff is fair game. But if you look at the last 40 seconds of game one, they need one stop, and they give up 2 layups. So that's kind of on everybody. And on that final possession, both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving lose Jason Tatum. You can't allow the best player in the Boston Celtics to go unfettered through the lane and get a layup. And then obviously last night, 1 for 17. You brought up an interesting point, though, about changing things. It's funny. The team with the best record in the league, the Phoenix Suns, here's a team that went to the finals. So all we ever hear about is the NBA season doesn't really matter. It's not that important. Well, why did it matter to the team that went to the finals last year? Yeah. They play every game like it matters. And I think the Brooklyn Nets, the way that they started this season, and you brought it all up, first of all, you had James Harden out of shape. You had Kyrie, whatever your position is on his vaccination, we all know at the very least it was bizarre that he wasn't on the team, that he was only playing road games and not was able to play in Toronto and obviously in New York up until March. So you had that whole situation. Then you make a major trade, and the key piece you bring in hasn't played yet. So, the Nets, they've kind of treated this season to get ready for the postseason, and it's kind of catching up to them. It's been this like herky-jerky regular season, and now guess where they are? 0-2.
And Kevin Durant forced to carry the load.
That's right.
Let me be very, very clear to answer your question directly. The person I'm holding most responsible for all of this is Kyrie Irving. When you want to look at Kevin Durant and say he looked exhausted, let's say, for example, he may not have looked rattled, and instead somebody might say he looked exhausted. Well, why he look exhausted? Could it be because he's had to carry this load all season long by his own damn self? Could that be possible? Because guess what? Kyrie's out, and guess what? James Harden wants out, and KD is left there holding the bag, having to deal with everything. That might be a reason. I'm holding no one more accountable than Kyrie Irving. And then Kyrie Irving's the one that sat up there and said, for the record, we don't really need a coach. So when I look at Steve Nash and I look at whatever his deficiencies may be, which is solely on experience, which is something that he'll gather and gain as time goes on, well, why is an inexperienced head coach your head coach for a championship contender? Because Kyrie pushed for it and KD signed off on it, okay? So we have to look at it from that perspective. Now, of course, Sean Marks is the basketball executive, and we understand it's his decision, but we all know who the faces of this franchise, who are the faces of this franchise. It's Kyrie Irving and it's Kevin Durant. And if you're going to blame Kevin Durant for anything outside of his performance in these first two games, which is a complete aberration from anything I've ever seen in his entire career, spanning more than 935 games, okay? I have never seen this KD in these first two games. The only other thing to hold KD accountable for is that you the face. You the two-time champion. You the two-time NBA Finals MVP. You're the dude that can stand up and say, look, damn it, here's what we're doing. Period. And everyone will have to stand down and listen. And I don't know if that's what he has done.
And you know, you mentioned it. You want to be, everyone has to be all in. And it seems like Kevin Durant took a leap of faith to come here. James Harden wasn't all in this year, and Kyrie hasn't been all in the last 2 years. This Kevin Durant we're talking about. He deserves better than that.
He deserves a lot better.
Yeah, and he had to do it all by himself until
he deserves a lot better.
Let's keep in mind the Nets were preseason favorites to win the title, and now we're worried they might get swept. We'll keep it rolling here. Joel Embiid can do it all, including hitting a game winner in overtime to put the Sixers up 3-0 on the Raptors. What message is the big man in Philly sending? Also, we're a week out until the draft, and First Take will be there. Today we dive into Mac Jones and the Patriots and our Blitz installment as Mel Kiper Jr. stops by. First Take, we'll be right back.
Up in Toronto when they lost on the Kawhi Leonard shot, and he's walking off the court crying. You see him last night, the big smile on his face. Drake is walking behind him. Drake's already changed from the Raptors now, I guess, to the Philadelphia 76ers. But it's a great moment for Embiid, who really has taken ownership of this team. And we all know that Joel Embiid's been a great player. The issue with him has been his fitness, I think. You know, I don't think he took his career seriously enough. I think now that he's gotten himself in better shape, I think he understands the leadership part of it. Ben Simmons isn't there. James Harden wanted to go there. And I love what happened at the end of game 2 when he approached. You don't see that. He's going after Nick Nurse and saying, stop complaining about calls. And that's been a big part of the series thus far. And what do you do in the next game? On the road. That's where you make your bones in the NBA. You win road playoff games, and that's the biggest shot of Joel Embiid's career.
I think that Joel Embiid just reminded us all of his level of greatness. This is one of the great big men we've ever seen in the history of basketball from a talent perspective. When you think about the days of George Mikan, to the Wilt Chamberlains and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's, and obviously Shaq, and let me not forget Bill Walton, and because he was absolutely phenomenal until he hurt his foot. People don't realize how great Bill Walton was. He was something special. Let's throw his name in there as well. Believe it or not, even with the modern day era and we've gotten away from the big men, we can't ignore Embiid. You can put Embiid right in that conversation with those guys. Let's say, for example, he wins a championship. You can put him in that conversation. Let's say we look at just from a talent perspective and compare his talents to the great talent to big men that we've seen throughout NBA history. He's right up there. Joel Embiid is right up there. And I think that that's something that we have to pay attention to. He was my vote for league MVP because I took into account not just the fact that he took this season seriously from day one, the fact that he had to carry the load that he had to carry because of Ben Simmons and all the stuff that was going on with him. That was such an incredible distraction to the city of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia 76ers franchise. And then the trade for Harden and how that was expected to take something away from him to some degree or what have you. Still in all, they were winning basketball games. They were riding Joel Embiid to win those basketball games. And I'm certainly not about to sit up here and sneeze at the Joker, Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I've been big about Devin Booker and the consideration he warranted. But when I think about knowing Philadelphia the way that I do, Frank, working there for 17 years with the Philadelphia Inquirer, knowing how that city is, how it can be, and it's not an insult, it's a compliment, because it's a rough city, and you got to be a rough rider to be up in that city, and to know what Ben Simmons did in terms of what his situation was, not really wanting to be there to play for them, and Joel Embiid having to shoulder all of that. I think that Joel Embiid this year has shown his greatness, he's shown his leadership, and he's got one of the great personalities in the game of basketball as well. This is a star that you want to shine a light on, because you never know what he's going to say. You do know he's going to back up whatever he says. He's not shying away from anything, and it's actually a lot of fun, and he makes you laugh 90% of the time that he's saying something. No matter what it is that he says, you actually enjoy it. It is a great thing for the NBA that he is the superstar that he is, because he is a superstar.
And I think, too, he fills up a room the way Shaq did. Shaq embraced the fact that he was the biggest guy there, and he loved it. He loved being the center of attention. Everybody look at me. A player that we know that played for the Knicks, Eddie Curry, was 7 feet tall. He always would kind of duck down. He didn't really want people looking at him. Embiid is like, I'm the guy.
Big
Everyone look at me. Shaq was the same way. I love the way Embiid has played this year, but we also know this, Steve. You talked about Philadelphia being a tough market. Things can change rapidly. And if they get out of this round, which we think they will, and if they play Miami, and it's looking like that could be the case, you get knocked out in the second round, it's still going to be on his resume yet to advance past the second round. So there's still a lot of work to be done. They've done a good job putting a team around him. And I'll tell you something else, too, on behalf of Doc Rivers. Last night, late in that game, and I'm not saying if it goes to double overtime, they're not winning. But Joel Embiid dribbled himself into a corner. He had nowhere to go. Doc Rivers sprinting down the bench, calling timeout. I know everyone in Toronto is upset because he said he was on the court when he called timeout. Give me a break. Make a stop right there. But Embiid, that was a great play by Doc and a great shot by Joel Embiid. And he wanted it. When he addressed Nick Nurse, he wanted the media to ask, what were you talking about? And he had no problem saying, I told them, in parentheses, stop complaining about calls.
Yep, but Frank, you and I both covered this league for decades. Here's the deal. Like you said, they got to get out of the second round. That's true. But you also know we're going to highlight why if they don't.
That's true. Yep.
And if you're Joel Embiid, as long as you do what Joel Embiid customarily does, but some other people don't, we're going to look at them before we look at Joel Embiid, because if he does what we expect him to do, we're going to say he did his job. You can't do it by yourself. He did his job.
Hey, one-word answer here. Would you take the Sixers or Heat in the next round, Frank?
Heat.
Stephen A?
Heat.
Okay, keep it going. We are 1 week until the NFL draft. First Take will be coming to you live from Las Vegas. Coming up, Mel Kiper Jr. joining the show to talk Justin Herbert and those Chargers. We'll be right back.
Justin Herbert, I can only see where he's ascending.
Herbert is being chased, thrown on the run, touchdown. Herbert looks to Eckler, caught, touchdown, Chargers.
Worked out pretty well up to now, so it doesn't sometimes look straight line to our fans or to myself, but I'm results oriented.
How many rings do you have, Robert Kraft? Our First Take draft blitz continues with the Patriots. New England lost offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, huge loss. He's the newest coach of the Raiders, while the Pats' marquee move was locking in safety Devin McCourty for at least one more season. Their only first-round pick in this year's draft is the 21st spot. A big focus this season will be the progression of last year's first-round pick. That would be quarterback Mac Jones. Here to help us break it all down, the one and only Mel Kiper Jr. There he is.
Yeah.
Hi, Mel. Great to see you. Great to see you. Great to see you. Said that Mac Jones would probably be the top quarterback in this draft class if he were coming out this year and not last year. So tell me this. Do you believe Bill Belichick can turn Jones into a real franchise quarterback?
Potentially, Molly. He doesn't have the kind of skill set that you normally say a franchise quarterback has, but keep in mind, Tom Brady didn't have that either. Running at 5'2", 440 and only a 24 vertical, lowest numbers I've ever had for a quarterback coming out that was actually written up by me in terms of an analysis. So Mac Jones is always going to be the smartest man in the building, okay? Any position, any quarterback, on a scale of 1 to 10, he's a 20 in terms of intelligence, football IQ. That will take him a long way. It took him to the #1 spot of all the rookie quarterbacks this year when he was the last of that top group taken last year. Does he need help around him? Yes, he's both tight ends on the field at the same time. He needs Devontae Parker to have that impact, and obviously he's got to keep improving that arm strength. It's happened with Breeze, it happened with Manning, it's happened with other quarterbacks, Brady included. Arm strength got better once they were in the league as the years moved along. So things have to fall into place. There's tremendous quarterback talent, obviously in the AFC, obviously in their division with the great Josh Allen. So they're going to have to surround Mac. They're going to have to hope that he becomes similar to a Brady, where he knows so much about everything. He's so competitive, he can overcome a lack of mobility, which is the big thing that separates him from, say, even Joe Burrow. Burrow has that same mindset, but Burrow can move the chains with his legs. Mac Jones usually cannot.
Mel Kiper Jr., always good to see you, my brother. I got to ask you something, because so many people look at you and they ask questions about the players. I'm going to twist this a little bit because I respect your knowledge that much, and I'm going to ask you about the coach. We can look at Mac Jones, but Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator, is now departed for the Las Vegas Raiders. And obviously we've been hearing that Bill Belichick is going to be the dude that's calling the plays now. How much are you concerned, if at all, about the fact that Bill Belichick, a head coach, whose signature was defense prior to becoming a head coach and being the phenomenal coach that he is, the 7-time champion as a head coach that he is, 6 actually. How do you feel about Bill Belichick being that guy, calling plays and running the offense for the New England Patriots and Mac Jones?
Well, you got Joe Judge, who has experience on the offensive side of the ball, coaching wide receivers early on. You have Matt Patricia, has experience coaching the offensive line. So both these individuals have been on the offensive side of the ball, Stephen A. And if you're a great defensive mind, you know what it takes to attack you. So from an offensive standpoint, it's basically back and forth there. So the knowledge has to be both ways. So Bill Belichick, while he's a great defensive mind, also knows about, hey, if I'm an offense, I know how to go against this defense that I'm seeing. So I don't get to why you have to label one just an offense or defensive guy. If you're attacking a defense, you know all about that defense and vice versa. So they'll figure it out. And Mac Jones, keep in mind, Stephen A., as I said, isn't just average to slightly above average in terms of football IQ. He is one of the smartest quarterbacks I've seen come into the NFL in a long, long time. And that's what's taken him to this point where you can overcome a lack of mobility, overcome a lack of big-time arm strength to become, last year, the best of that tremendous group of rookie quarterbacks, where he was the guy that fell to New England. They just fell in their lap. Yep. Nobody tried to trade up to this guy. Nobody felt good enough about Mac Jones to go get him. He fell to 15, and here he is, a Patriot. So he will overcome a lot, as Tom Brady did. He's not going to be Tom Brady. Let's not ever go there. But can he be a Super Bowl winning quarterback in New England? Potentially he can. But the AFC is so great at quarterback, you know, spectacular quarterbacks, that it's going to be very, very difficult to do what Brady did if you're Mac Jones, or coming anywhere close to that in terms of Super Bowls. Or if he gets one, he'll be lucky.
But, Mel, I got to ask you this as well, because you've been around so long and you've been covering all of these guys, and you saw how Tom Brady was when he came into the draft, when he came into the NFL, rather, right? So I'm looking at it back in those days now. We look at Mac Jones now. The football IQ is up there. The athleticism is not. Obviously, you're not saying Tom Brady, and I get you on that, but you're basically drawing comparisons as it pertains to what he's lacking and what he brings to the table. In today's NFL culture, how much of a factor is that compared to when Tom Brady came in? When I look at today's game, I'm thinking about the duality of quarterbacks, the fact that they can run with the football, they can throw the football. There's very few dudes that are just one-dimensional and are successful. Essentially, that's what we're saying about Mac Jones. Don't expect him to run with the daggone football. He's not the most athletic dude in the world. He doesn't have those kind of wheels. He's a guy that's going to stand in the pocket and fling that football. Is that an impediment? Is that a problem? What are your thoughts about that in today's game?
It's been brought up a lot, Steve. I had argument with a lot of people, or disagreements, I should say, about Mac Jones and the so-called pocket passer that's a dinosaur in the NFL. And my comment last year, at the same time when we were debating Mac Jones, whether he should even be a first-round pick or not, because a lot of people thought he shouldn't, okay? I said, well, if he's a dinosaur, why is Tom Brady at age 44 still winning a Super Bowl? Why is he, he's the ultimate pocket guy. Like I said, the worst 40-time reverse vertical of any quarterback in 45 years I've ever evaluated, outside of Ryan Mallett, who was right there. Ironically, Mallett was drafted by the Patriots. And here's Mac Jones, who's faster and more athletic than Tom Brady. But I think when you look at catching lightning in a bottle, Tom Brady was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of quarterback. End of the 6th round, he took a cornerback from Virginia, head him in the 6th round, and here he is, greatest of all time. Johnny Unitas, same type of thing. That doesn't happen that often, where Johnny Unitas, Tom Brady, overlooked by everybody, become the best in the business. So Mac Jones, like I said, if he can win one Super Bowl with New England, I think the over-under for Super Bowls won by Mac Jones, I would put at a half or 1. Okay? Because it ain't going to happen. It's too many great quarterbacks in the AFC. The NFC's got their share as well, and there's more great quarterbacks coming into the draft next year.
Absolutely. Let's just say Tom Brady is a complete outlier. I want to go to the AFC West, though, because it is loaded after this offseason, Mel. And we're going to look at the Chargers. So you were obviously high on Justin Herbert, coming out of the draft. And he's impressed, and he's been incredibly impressive, except he hasn't gotten his team to the playoffs, just barely making the cut there last season. So who do the Chargers need to draft to get Herbert to the postseason?
They got the left tackle Slater, Molly, and Stephen A. last year, who was really good, and now the right tackle spot where Trevor Penning, coming out of Northern Iowa, could be the guy. Now, the New Orleans Saints, pick ahead, could look at Trevor Penning as a left tackle. For the Chargers, he would be a right tackle, an immediate starter. Technique needs to improve, but that nastiness, that fire, that talent is there for Trevor Penning. The O-line coach has got to get him to where the technique improves. He's got more bend, that he can deal with the quick outside pass rushers in the NFL better than obviously he had to do at the 1AA level. If they don't get Trevor Penning and say he goes one pick earlier, or he's not on the board, then Jordan Davis, the huge mountain of a man at defensive tackle, that run stuffer who can help out. They went to free agency, got a couple guys can help. Jordan Davis could solidify an interior of that defense. It was gashed last year. Remember Jacobs on that 11-yard run after they called timeout to get in there where they could win that football game? Well, that defensive front was horrible. And if Penning's gone, I would look to maybe Jordan Davis, defensive tackle from Georgia.
All right, we got to leave it there because we're up against it. Mel, 1 week from today, cannot wait. The NFL draft will be here. Mel Kiper Jr., we'll talk to you soon, sir. When we come back here on First Take, question marks surrounding the health of Devin Booker. Should the Warriors now be considered the favorites in the West? And staying in the West, Utah has their hands full with the Luka-less Mavs, but could this be Donovan Mitchell's last season with the Jazz?